Hello, welcome to another tutorial from BlenderCookie.com. My name is Tiago Nunes, and this is the final part of the series on how to improve your renders using some basic photography and composition techniques. So, on the previous parts, I tried to communicate the concepts using very simplified examples, but there is nothing like looking at actual artworks and studying the way that they were put together. So for you today, I have just that, actual artworks. These are all by David Rivoire, who you most probably already know, at least from his work in the last Blender Foundation Open movies, Sintel and now Tears of Steel. David was very kind to allow us to showcase his work for the purpose of this tutorial, so make sure you thank him for being awesome like that, and check out his website at davidrivoire.com. Now, although David has a great involvement with the Blender community, and he sometimes does use Blender as one of his tools, you've definitely noticed he is actually a digital painter. We as 3D artists are still able to change many things right before we render our images. We can change our lights, we can change our shaders, we can move the objects effortlessly, we can really do a lot of things even after most of the work has been done. But as a painter, David doesn't really have that luxury. What that means is that he is practically forced to think about his composition right at the start of production. In fact, in his latest time-lapse video of him painting, I believe as, what was it, Owl Princess, I think, which you can find at his blog, he starts by drawing a few very simple sketches, all at thumbnail size, to figure out which worked best, and only then did he move on to the painting part. I asked David if he would still recommend that we think about our composition in the beginning, even if we have that much more flexibility to change things later, to which he replied yes, as early as possible. He completed that by saying, and I quote, "It's not for having a good composition, but one that helps set the eyes to the points you want, and so make the viewer focus on the theme of the picture." So for me, that is twofold. One, that's what I try to emphasize at times in the previous videos. Good composition is relative. You can have an image that follows the rules, so to speak, but if the rules don't help tell your story, then your composition is bad. And the second meaning to me, from what David said, is that you can think about it this way. Your story is your composition. It will be the story that will drive your decisions, so you need to know your story before you start. So take David's advice and start by thinking and sketching things out. If it looks good in the small sketch, it would only look better in the final image. So let's jump into the artworks. So the first one that I want to show you is this one, and for a few different reasons. The first one is balance. Do you remember when we talked about balance, about that imaginary scale in the center of the image and balancing your main points of interest according to it? Now, the main point of interest in this image is this airship right here. It takes up a lot of visual weight, and the second point of interest are these characters over here. And as you can see, they're much smaller, even after taking perspective into account, and they are to the left of the frame. So if you imagine that scale right here in the center of the image, you've got a very big, heavy object close to the center, but to the left, and then you have smaller objects, smaller visual weight, to the left of the image, close to the edge, so that imaginary scale would stay balanced physically. The second thing to look at are all the leading lines leading to the airship. You've got, of course, the bridge going all the way to the airship. You've got the perspective on the trees going to the airship. Even this building and the tree make this implied line over here. There's also this airship that is faded away so that it doesn't compete for attention. It's also pointing down. And of course, you have all the eye lines of these characters over here looking at the ship. Now, the fact that they are faced away for me serves two purposes. The first one is, of course, the eye lines that we talked about. So our eyes are drawn as a viewer to look at wherever these guys are looking at. So we look at them, they're looking at the ship, so we look at the ship. Now, the second thing is that we as humans tend to be really drawn into looking at faces. So if there's a face in an image, we look there instantly. So if these guys were facing each other, for example, if they were talking, And if this little girl was playing with her cat and looking at her, our eyes would go immediately down here and look at them. We would instantly give it much more importance, and suddenly the main focal point, the airship back here, would lose a lot of interest. So it would actually become like an environment prop back there, which wouldn't really make sense. So there you go. If you want to include characters in your image, for example, if you want to give a sense of scale, to make people realize how big the airship is, for example, but you don't want them to compete that much for attention, one way to do that is to turn their faces away so you can't see them. So the second image that I have for you is this one, and it demonstrates a few things as well. The first one is the way that the subject is positioned, and it's pretty much the rule of thirds that we talked about. You can imagine the image being split in thirds, right here and right here. You have the face pretty much on this third here, if you imagine this vertical line coming down here and a horizontal third coming down here. The dragon is also on another third over here. There's also a leading line from the tail leading us to the face, and the face to the book. All her hair is pointing down at the book as well. And there is a sense of calm and serenity in this image. So she's reading, she's just chilling. The dragon is sleeping. So you have this very nice horizontal line for stability, and also you can pretty much see a triangle here as well, which is stable with one of its faces on the ground. This image is pretty much a triangle right here with all this white space over here. Now another example is this one. Look at the dynamics in this one. One thing that contributes to all the dynamics, of course, the movement and the moment, which is basically capturing a moment in time. There's all this stuff flying in the air, and you've captured a still image. It's completely still. Nothing is moving, of course, in the image. This is not an animation. But of course you know there is movement there, and there is moment, and that instantly gives dynamics to an image. Another thing that gives this image a lot of dynamics is the lot of diagonal lines that are used. You've got diagonal lines in perspective all over the place. Another thing that I want to talk about, and that we talked about previously, was breaking the rule. Remember when we talked about putting a subject on the opposite end of the side that it was faced towards? So this guy is running to the side of the frame. So in the first, say for example, the first iteration you would do for this picture, maybe you want the guy over here to give him some space to run to, so to speak. But you remember how putting him on the opposite side of the frame brought attention to what he was running from? There you go. So you have this big monster right here. He's running outside of the frame. You have no idea what's going on here, which causes tension, but it makes sense. He's running away from something. And there you have it. Now let's have a look at this one. This one is so cool. I really love the light on her hands. It's just fantastic, almost like a picture. This one is very serene as well, and I want to talk about both light and color in this one. If you have a look at the color palette, there is nothing here that strikes out, so to speak. Everything is very green, very earthy, very orange, very warm, which is pretty much what the image wants to communicate. Just a serene moment in the forest with this sort of elf, or not an elf, she doesn't have pointy ears, but this forest girl just having a good time playing a tune on the spider harp. So everything here is warm, the light is warm, the colors are warm. There is no weird or intruder color like a bright red. There is no blue. Everything is playing into the same tones, so that there is almost no dynamics, which is pretty much the opposite of the previous picture. Now I can also see a triangle here from her hands to the spider to the face, which in my opinion really helps structure the image. And finally, chaos. Remember when I said that you could break everything or not have any sort of rule in your image if that's what you're going for? I really love this image, and to me it really depicts the crazy world of Alice in Wonderland exactly because of that. There is so much going on. It's crazy. It's completely it's like the figments of her imagination. It's so crazy here. There's a lot of things that you want to look at, especially because of the use of faces again. So you got the cat's face, the caterpillar's face, Alice's face, the rabbit's face, and it has contrast. So these guys are blue, so to speak, and in contrast to the whole warm tones of the rest of the image. This guy is almost bright red in his jacket as well. And still, it is chaotic, but there's a flow to it. And an instant way to see that flow is to see all these curves that are going on. You go from the cat to the caterpillar to the teapot here where Alice is, to the tree, to the this sort of pathway the rabbit's on over here. So you got all these swerving curves giving a flow to the image. And while it's chaotic and there's a lot of things to see and your eye keeps jumping from place to place, it's not, you know, you're not, how do you say, you're not confused. It flows, you know. It flows. This sounds so abstract, and it kind of is, but I think you see what I'm going at. And that's all I have for you. I really hope you have enjoyed this series. It was a pleasure doing these videos for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and remember to stay tuned. Have a good one, guys.